Hello, everyone, and welcome to another IG Talks. Today, I'm super excited to introduce our guest, founder and creative director of Verso Design, Lauren Vada. Verso Design is a multifaceted design studio based in San Francisco Bay Area. The studio engages in big and small problem solving for clients, cultivating solutions for identities and brand strategies, websites, and data visualization, and plus printed communications. One of the things I love about Lauren is that she's very globally minded and is always ready to take on any design challenge. When Project Good Work needs next level design expertise, Lauren is the person we team up with. In fact, Lauren was the lead designer during our Global Red Cross project. During that project, I saw that Lauren really seeks to understand how to design and how a design is utilized by the client to make sure that it has like the greatest impact. So Lauren is very passionate about design, but also about how it is utilized, not only with just the client internally, but how it's going to be delivered externally. And so today we're going to be learning more about Verso Design and the importance of branding. So welcome, Lauren. So how are you doing today?
I'm well. First of all, thank you for that incredible intro. I think if I ever need an intro, I'm just going to invite you to be on the call. I can't express just how happy I am to be here and have this chat with you and dive into this topic that I genuinely get excited about on a daily basis. And, I realized in preparing for our conversation that I just have so much collected knowledge to synthesize and share. And so thank you for the platform to do so.
Mhm. So I guess I know, that you have started Verso Design. I'm forgetting how many years, I guess, that you've been doing Verso Design, but tell us, I guess, a little bit about like what drove you to start Verso Design in the first
Yeah,
place,
yeah.
and I guess, how did you start envisioning your design studio?
That's a great question. So um, let's see. I guess I started Verso formally maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, but I've been working independently for probably the past 10 years. Um, And now we're a team of four. So just a shout out to my team, Jennifer, Vivian, Shpressa. And we're, all across the US, which works well because our clients are too. But yeah, when I started Verso, there were a couple things that were really important to me. So one was to not have um, the name of the company named after me, because ultimately I've always foreseen it as a team effort. I think, there's a lot of magic that happens in collaboration, and I never really wanted to be myself. Not to mention my last name is impossible for, like, I think only one person has gotten it right in my life of how to pronounce it. And so
Mhm.
you couldn't really like name it after me, but it's pronounced Vida. But anyway, Verso was a lot easier to say. But more importantly, it's a group, and we, are able to have more impact in doing things together, and having them just be more thought through and thorough. So yeah, I named Verso after, I think there's like some heritage there because it refers to the left page in a book. And I had started my career in publishing, so it has some homage to my roots, but it's really about this idea of turning the page and moving forward. I guess in terms of like what we do, we're incredibly lucky to work with a range of companies and
Mhm.
organizations, from Fortune 500s to educational institutions to nonprofits to dairy farmers. It's awesome to be able to like learn about the world through the
The
lens
fact you
of
said dairy
design.
farmers, I love
I
it.
love
So
it.
yeah.
I've honestly, like, I've traded. I think like when I was starting my career, gosh, it was probably like 18 years ago or so. I literally traded a woman at the farmer's market like design for a lifetime of goat cheese, so but it's, it's an amazing thing to barter. So
Yes.
with that said, like, we've been had the awesome opportunity to work with so many like incredible companies, and we just have this deep commitment to telling the stories of nonprofits, and knowing that in some small tangential way, we get to make a difference in the world.
Right. Well, I know, I know you from a personal standpoint, so I know that you dive into designs not just from like, okay, we got to get this done and do A, B, and C, but
Mm,
to really like help the client kind of think about what is their direction that they're going to go,
yeah,
not just in that moment, but for the future.
yeah,
And have it when you're creating something that they can have like I guess a longer timeline than they may have perceived, or
yeah.
that if in the future 5 years from the time that you do the project that they have minimal changes that they would need to make.
It's
So
so funny. I just had
mhm,
that exact conversation with a client yesterday who, we had built one of their websites like 10 years ago. And for the most part, it's held up. But that was like right as mobile was like emerging and websites needed to,
mhm,
be responsive. And so it doesn't do that. And when they were initially talking about the project, they were like, oh, we love, our website as it is. And we really hope that we can just like port it into this new format. And I was like, well, like you guys have grown so much over the past like 10 years. And it's amazing that you have this site that's lasted that long, but B, like let's look ahead and see, how we can have it continue to shape your mission, and how it can move you forward into your next 10 years. So yeah, it's, I think understanding the problem first and foremost really leads to the best solutions and yeah, the best outcome driving a lot of these like companies mission. So
mhm. And so that's like a perfect segue for my next question
uh-huh.
about talking about branding. I think I think it's like the word out there, like
Mm.
everywhere in society, that you have to have your personal brand, you have to have your company brand, like even your pet has a brand, everything
Yeah.
has a
So
brand.
true, so true.
So I think sometimes the word brand gets like either like overused or people don't really understand what it is.
Yeah, yeah, that is a perfect lead in. Yeah, like I think there are definitely a lot of like misconceptions around like what a brand is. And it has become so vague between like, as you were saying, like a dog's Instagram profile who might have, millions of followers too.
Yes, yes,
I
yes,
think
I've seen, unfortunately, I have a friend that has a dog that has
totally, yeah.
and their dog is on Instagram, and I'm like, "Oh, goodness."
Yes, definitely. Like, I love your
Yes.
dog. I may not follow them on Instagram, but they're still awesome. Um, gosh, yeah. I mean, it's funny. Like I think so many clients come to us and they say, "I want a new brand," and what they really mean is like, "I want a logo," or we, have to focus on a new name, or we're looking to like update the look and feel of our website. And while we're capable of a lot of those things, I think, when they talk about, the term brand actually means something much greater. So those are all like components of like, the brand expression. But I gathered some quotes from some industry professionals that I love, and we can read through those. But one is, by brand we mean an organization that doesn't just sell something, but it also means something to people, and that's from the renowned agency Wolf Allens. Another one is, leading brands are able to form a deep emotional connection because they stand for something that people care about. It's what a business stands for at its very core. One of my, someone I've had the great fortune of taking a few courses with is Marty Newmeyer, and he says a brand is a person's gut feeling or impression about a product, service, or organization. And one of the most like memorable and recent quotes that I've come across was from Erwin Bernard Hines, who says that constructing a mental space to bring people together from around, or a brand is constructing a mental space to bring people together from around the world. And I think there's really awesome themes in there about like, building reputations, emotions, feelings, like constructing mental space in someone's mind, that our minds are so cluttered, like there's so much happening in our worlds on a daily basis. And like
Yes.
be able to have like an ounce of real estate in that, I think is pretty profound. But also this idea of like connectedness, and bringing people together. through what you believe in. And so, I think it provokes this bigger question of like, how do you build an emotional connection? And I broke this down into, kind of defining those things. But one is to really like, um, actually, Marty Neumeyer talks a lot about this in his book Zag, but it would just be radically different, like blow people's minds and give them something to remember. Um, Another way to help establish that real estate in their minds is like through trust. And trust really comes from like meeting and beating customer expectations time and time again. Um, and then finally, like defining a clear stance of who you are and what you stand for through your mission and values. So people are so, as we just mentioned, like they're so busy and they just often make their decisions impulsively based on emotion or
Mm.
things that, maybe a friend had told them about. And so they like trust their opinions. And so, if you can understand your audience and what their values are, and you're like truly solving for a need of like if you're truly solving a need, then likely they'll tag along and advocate for your cause as well. And so now you've built an army of people who will help build your brand for you.
Yes, and yeah, and you bring up, as you were kind of giving different definitions of brand, and then I'm also thinking about, what's going on in society,
Hmm.
and it's become, right now, this is my opinion, but I think it's a global opinion right now that it's critical to decide who you are
Yeah.
and what you stand for. And so that's why I wanted to talk about brand. Is that brand right now is a critical element when it's coming to people who are creating new organizations, or right now, after everything that's happened in the last 3 years, maybe revamping their brand of how they want to look at themselves.
Yeah.
Because we are now, I know this is cliche, but in a new world,
Sure. Yeah.
as
Yeah. It
everybody
is.
keeps
It is.
saying, the
Yeah.
new world.
Crazy.
Although I'm
Crazy but
like, I think
normal.
I'm
Yeah.
still sitting in the same chair, but the new world.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yes. But yes, but in this, like, in this new environment that we all find ourselves, it becomes critical to really, I guess, do a deeper self-reflection
Mm.
when it does come to your business. And also, since everybody's looking at, what their personal brand is of who they are. So that's, I loved all the definitions that you brought up.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just gave me a light bulb the minute that you said that. I was like, this is the time to really focus and understand brand, because of where we're going in life, society, and the world.
Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
absolutely. Like I think there's like branding historically has kind of like transformed from, simply making your mark on something, which I think is where a lot of like the misconceptions of like, oh, a logo is a brand, come from. But um, then it kind of like transformed into like what these things do. So it's like, I don't know, maybe that was like back in the like mid 20s, like at the beginning of like the industrial era. But it's like, you can have canned soup or something on the shelf, and you'll always have food at the ready. But then eventually, it was more about like what you feel from doing this thing. It's like if you wear lipstick, then you'll feel sexy, and kind
Mhm.
of like the outcome of like purchasing this product and what it could do. But I think um, it's kind of amazing how brand has transformed now to being this identifier of who you are. Choosing what organizations you're going to support. Like I recently got like a card from someone that I had donated to, and it was like, oh, I'm happy to be this card carrying member of, say like the ACLU or something. And um, it really like, yeah, choosing the car that you drive or the clothes that you wear and whether you want to have like logos on it or not, are all saying something about who you are. But it's really emerged into this sense of tribalism. And I think, from what I've read and where I see things going is like this really exciting stage where brands are standing for something in particular. There are a few that or like might partner with other like nonprofit organizations to help this cause that they're championing. And I think it's exciting for the nonprofit space because now they're not only getting like funding from some of these corporate partners, but they're creating like true partnerships to help advocate for them. But I think without all of that said, like it really comes down to like character and credibility in the nonprofit space. And trust is truly built from like building an enduring focus from your mission, purpose, and values. And like living and breathing those things, which eventually leads to like creating more donors, stronger partners, better board members, larger audience. And even like volunteers, because people are happy to be a part of your mission.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Yeah, so thank you for kind of giving people more of a global picture of what a brand is and really understanding what it is, since
Yeah,
everybody wants to be one.
definitely.
But
um
it's a lot more than just pretty pictures.
yes, yes, yeah,
Yes,
I mean that's just one small facet of it for sure. I think like
yes.
back to, maybe I know I had answered like what a brand is, but like I think one of your initial questions was also like what is branding. And
Mhm.
I think um I wanted to kind of like define the difference between like what a brand is and what the act of branding is, because I think they're two kind of, while they're related, they're also different.
Mhm.
But branding is the act of consciously connecting your business to your audience. So it's like this act of like understanding who you are, but connecting the dots in the DNA of your strategy, your business strategy, to like how you're going to communicate and be involved with your audience. Um, this is usually done through like 5 hard and messy steps, as I say.
Uh-huh.
It's not easy work. And each one, like, sometimes it's not always like, sometimes you'll think that you have most of one figured out, and then you'll get a few steps down the line, and then you're like, wait, this actually doesn't work on step 1, and we need to like go back and think about what that is. But while I'll provide like a high level for each of these steps, I would definitely point people to either like Marty Neumeyer's books on different aspects of branding. I think there's at least 5 of them, as well as a set of like master classes that he and Andy Starr have developed at levelc.org. Um, so the steps um, that he really advocates for are like to differentiate, collaborate, innovate, validate, and cultivate. And differentiate is really about these 3 questions, like who are you, what do you do, why does it matter? And again, this is really high level. There's so like a tremendous amount more to this, but for the sake of having a more compact
Yes.
conversation, like this is just really
Yeah.
skimming the
Yeah.
surface. So
Mhm.
I think fortunately for um a lot of like companies and organizations, like the first 2 answers are, or first 2 questions are pretty easy to answer. Like where, for instance, we're a nonprofit public theater dedicating to promoting social change or something. Um, but the why, which is like the third question, why does it matter? Why is it important to you, and why is it important to your audience, is usually the harder thing to provide an answer for. So it's really all about like, what is the problem that you're solving in the world, and how are you making impact? So oftentimes, as noted, like, to do this, we need to remove ourselves and like from the equation, and just spend time defining the audiences or the beneficiaries of your services, to really make a meaningful impact and like defining your mission. And yeah, like the outcome of this step is usually, your purpose statement, your mission statement, your vision statement, as well as some ideas around like your audiences, their mores, and those will eventually lead to your values as an organization, because those things are often closely tied. The next step in the process is to collaborate. So this is really about like defining your team. Like once you know what you're going to do and what those steps are, um, and like what your mission is, then really like assembling the team of, whether it's like strategists, researchers, advertising, PR, marketing teams, designers, whether they're service designers, graphic designers, UI UX designers. There's so many different components of that. And in which way you want that team to be assembled. Like there are agencies who do it all, agencies who might specialize in a few facets of those things and hire out for some of those things, or it could just be obviously in-house teams have a lot of like know-how, especially for an organization, and like how to maneuver. And then, there's also this sort of Hollywood model where it's a collection of specialists like coming together to make something happen, which, is how we often work. Um,
Yes. Yes.
um, and yeah, like I think it's also important to note that at this, stage of the process to just like mark, the stakeholders and board members who are important to be a part of the process. And are there any members from your audience or beneficiaries of your service that would be really helpful in understanding like how things benefit them, and like how to make things, like particularly in service design, how they could shed a unique perspective toward any solutions that you're proposing. The next step is really about innovation. And, as a visual design firm, this is our favorite part. This is where the magic happens. It's like, very, again, kind of messy balance of, strategy and creativity. But I think this is where we strive. We really love to know the tools of our toolbox, and then like understand where we have flexibility to really run. And this step is really about defining the big idea, the core creative concepts for connecting with your audience. This step will inform everything you do, from the name, if you're a new company or organization, to the verbal and visual brand elements, to the service design, the products, apps, and everything that comes from that core creative idea. It's in this step that you're diving into the foundation that's been set and building out the deliverables toward an organization, program, or service. There's two more steps. So the next one is to validate, and this step is about really testing your ideas, breaking down assumptions that you might have, and gaining insight through prototyping to find ways to improve. So getting feedback about, which helps validate the existing ideas, but also inspires new ones toward improved solutions. And you can do this through like field testing, user testing, focus groups are okay in some scenarios, but they're a little bit difficult sometimes too, because some people act differently when they know that they're being observed, or
Yes. Yes.
someone might be more extroverted than everyone else in the room, and so their what they have to say carries a lot more weight than the actual opinions of people in the group. So anyway, I think like field testing, user testing are like great ways to go. And, just asking people like questions while you're running these tests to learn as much as you can from them, or simply like observe how they're using, or like going through a process, is really important. And, this part of validation is really about like, I say like rinse, wash, and repeat, but, to do this until things are more seamless and the solution is ready to share with the world. The last step is really just being like cognizant of cultivating culture, and to recognize that brands are living entities, both internally and externally. And, that being a steward of a brand is really an ongoing task. Like you're not going to just create a brand, launch it into world, and then like just let it live, or not, or die, like,
Yeah.
but it
Yeah,
really
it's like
is.
a plant.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly. Exactly.
it's like a plant.
What a beautiful plant that is. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like externally, as you had kind of signified, like things are changing on a daily basis, especially over these past few years. And, particularly in the social impact space, like, you know, every headline changes the course of like the trajectory of what's to come. And yeah, brands are also interacting with their audiences more frequently than ever. Back in the day, it was just a very like one way sort of communication with like PR, and it was like, we say this thing and you listen. And now it's very vocal and public conversations like through social media, like multiple times a day or at least multiple times a week. And, you know, I think that puts a lot more pressure, like verbally, but also visually on brands to like be constantly like in the minds of people and responding in a responsible way and at the right times. You know, it's not always time for everyone to speak up too. Internally, I recently heard this idea that employees are the new consumers. And I thought this was
I heard
especially
that.
provoking because, you know, it's just about how people beyond like supporting organizations or buying goods and, you know, having them represent them, but it's really about like working in a place where your mission aligned. And you know, the best talent goes to the places that are great places to work and have good values. And you know, frankly, it's a tremendous source of energy for like employees, but also, you know, as a external vendor, like I feel like it's a huge source of energy for us as well.
Yes.
So I guess just to summarize, I recognize that was kind of like a lot of info, but
No, it's great. It's great because I think a lot of people don't ever think of all these things. Everybody's just thinking of the visual.
yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So, yeah, just to summarize, you know, it's branding is the act of strategically connecting your business and your audience. And this is done through differentiation, collaboration, innovation, validation, and cultivation. Um,
Mhm.
awesome. I guess,
And then I
yeah.
guess in closing, one of the things you've kind of I guess already covered it, but one of the I guess the biggest hurdles, and I guess now everybody's looking at it, is for especially nonprofits. I always feel that they are the
Yeah.
ones that have the most difficulty jumping on board with creating a brand, and or they feel that we're a nonprofit. We don't need to because we're saving children, or we're saving whales, or
Yeah.
or who knows what they're saving.
Totally.
but
Totally.
and so people are like, it's about the heart, it's the emotion,
Mm,
it's the we that's what's important. And I think that's always the biggest hurdle, at least that's what I found, is like
yeah.
people in the nonprofit world, they're like, we don't really need all that. That's corporate, like Coca-Cola.
Mhm, mhm, totally,
Um,
totally. Yeah, I mean, I think with that said, like it definitely is shaped a little bit differently for the nonprofit sector, but it's um incredibly important because I think that, you know, your brand really is tied to your mission and your vision and your values. And when you're able to like live and breathe that on a daily basis, like through um, you know, like and well, I guess I'll kind of back up. Like I feel like there's this like maybe what you're talking about is like this old perception of like what the brand is. And it's like, oh, you know, we have higher visibility, which gives us this favorable positioning in relation to competitors, you know,
mhm,
and that like builds audiences,
mhm.
which will eventually translate into fundraising. But the new model is really more toward like um, having this like having your brand which is highly based around like your person purpose mission and values and vision um, but having that lead like be the strategic role in your organization's like core performance. And so, you know, it builds trust when the mission and perception are aligned, but B, this allows the organization to run a lot more efficiently and be decisive in, you know, all of their actions and hire the right staff and find the right partners in the community, or, you know, building coalitions of like-minded partners. And, you know, ultimately all of this leads to even more and much greater impact. So, you know, I think
And
this is
saving
also,
money,
yeah,
because
exactly.
nonprofits are
Oh,
always thinking
totally.
about money, so and saving
Absolutely,
money.
absolutely. Yeah, they can definitely be a
Yeah,
lot more efficient with their money yeah.
yeah. Mhm.
So yeah, you know, it definitely like provides a shortcut for everyone and everyone's like really aligned to what they're doing. There's this really great book that I had come across. It's called A Brand Idea by Natalie Laidler Kylander and Julia Shepard Stenzel. I apologize if I'm pronouncing their names wrong, but I definitely recommend it for anyone in the space. And you know, brand idea stands for integrity, democracy, ethics, and affinity. Um, And I can talk through just kind of the high level of each of these too, if that's helpful.
You can. I don't want to push your time because I know you have a time limit, so it's up to you. So,
Yeah, I'll breeze through them.
uh,
I have like 5 more minutes, so we'll do
okay.
that if that's okay.
Okay.
So yeah, brand integrity is really about like forming the trust with the internal and external brands, or when the internal and external brands are aligned, and doing what they promise to do. They're an ethical company and like using their resources in a ethical way.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
also and they're making like strides toward making impact in their mission. This integrity is, obviously, I think most important with any brand. I think Warren Buffett had said, it takes like 20 years to build a brand and, one moment to like 5 seconds to like tear
Yes.
it down.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. And unfortunately we've seen that in the last
Yes.
few
Yeah, like the
years.
last
Yeah.
week alone, totally. Yes.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, this integrity is really helpful because like staff members, like volunteers, trustees are all aligned in the why and they can easily execute on that mission. Brand democracy is about like trusting your organization members and staff and participants to all communicate the core identity in their own words and like through their own stories about like why the brand is important.
Mhm.
And while it's impossible to police a brand, but there are some things that you can do to like help support that narrative. So some of this is like done through like building templates, obviously brand guides. um, I've seen this done a lot recently, like in the kind of like grassroots organization where they're like providing postcards or maybe scripts or letters that people can like send, and so it's really easy for people to like take action and make impact. The ACLU, I think it was in 2017 they did a rebrand, but it there's over, I think they said like 53 chapters across the US, and so creating like a brand identity system for people to communicate like the um like expressive but also like serious matters, um I think is just brilliant. If anyone, Googles it, I highly recommend taking a look. I
I
think,
think you actually did some like years ago. You did a similar thing of creating like a template piece, if you remember that.
yeah, I do
Yes.
remember that.
Yeah, I remember we worked on
Yeah,
that before.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I mean, it's so
Yes.
nice to be able to like
Yeah.
empower
Mhm.
people nationally to be able to use these resources.
Mhm.
Um, Brand ethics is about like deploying a brand in a way that reflects its core values. So, an example of this is really like if your organization is about promoting dignity for all people, like don't show people at their worst in order to like pull heartstrings and, gain funding. But like really show people in the better place that you're making for them, so that they're also shown with dignity. You're showing like the impact of the work that you're doing, and showing people at their best. I think that's really important so that they're not like objects of advertising for your organization. Um, Also, I think in terms of like living and breathing brand ethics, like Patagonia is a really good example of this, who, just like
Yeah, he recently, yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
recently, just like built a new trust, for the company's like profits, to make sure that they can continue like giving back to save the world, and this is also like they do it in so many ways, from like creating their durable goods with like a mindful footprint, and Worn Wear, which is like their program to reuse any of their like products. And then, yeah, like giving back 1% to every sale, like back to the planet, I think is incredible. And I think I had also read that, they like sponsor only athletes who are also environmental advocates. So it's just like talk about like really thinking about what your mission is, and like flexing it as many ways as you can to like build your reputation as a company, but also give back in a greater way. Uh,
When I read about them recently with the CEO, I was like, wow. I
yes.
was like, wow. I'm all, how many people think like that? I was like point zero something percent.
No, yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yes.
yeah, yes,
Yeah.
yeah. So monumental and just yeah, it's incredible. Great.
Yes.
Um, and then I can just wrap up with these like last few ideas, but like the last step is really just about brand affinity, or I shouldn't say step, but like the last idea is around like brand affinity. And so like I think like the new model isn't really particularly for like having your brand do or your organization do all the work, but finding like-minded partners in the space, that can complement each other or collective interest in building coalitions of organizations. And occasionally, if you can, like partnering with companies that have overlapping missions so that you can do more work together. And yeah, like everyone has their different strengths that they can offer and just do make much bigger leaps and bounds towards some of the world's like biggest problems. So one example of this, which I won't talk too much about due to the time constraints, but I definitely think the UN's Global Campaign for Climate Action is a great example of this for their Race to Zero campaign. So you guys can look that up.
Yes, and that brings an important point. I think that where everything is kind of leading is that in the future everybody needs to collaborate
Yeah.
in order to move forward in the direction that we need to I hate to say this, but I guess it's true, save the world
Yeah,
because
totally.
we're
Yeah.
there now.
Mhm. Yeah. We are. Yeah.
Yes, so we all need to do that and and change our mindsets of I think a lot of us as always had this like scarcity
Mhm.
mindset, but
Mhm.
understanding that no, there's actually something there for everyone, and if we work together, we can, it'll just be better. So it's
Absolutely.
time to change everybody's mindsets. And yes, and how better to start it than looking at your brand.
Absolutely. Amazing. Well, I think that's a fantastic piece of inspiration to end on.
Yes. Well, thank you. I know that you're like right at time, so and a little bit over. So thank you for your time. I won't
Oh
keep
my
you much
gosh.
more.
Yeah.
And yeah, have a wonderful rest of the day.
Yeah, it's been an honor, Anne-Marie. So thank you again for inviting me. It's just a joy talking about this and with you in particular. All right.
Okay.
Have a good
Okay.
day.
Bye.